Microsoft is absolutely killing Sony and Nintendo when it comes to backward compatibility. Quantity of backward compatible titles, but also the quality with things like HDR and FPS boost, and also being able to remote play these on your phone, or basically any of the last 4 generations of consoles. Let's talk about this. Alrighty guys, share my screen. I have an article pulled up here from Kotaku. This came out yesterday. This will be cited or sourced in the description below if you want to read this in its entirety to kind of further educate yourself on the situation here. So, I still remember this drop right here. I am that old, seasoned, salty of a gamer dog. This is when The Rock and Bill Gates introduced the first Microsoft Xbox. My God, look at the size of the Duke, the original Xbox One controller. It is massive. I do have an Xbox original controller back there on the wall, but it's not the Duke. It's the smaller version that came out about 8 months to a year after launch. But dang, that thing is huge. It's almost as big as The Rock's mitts over here. So, this is a great article from Kotaku, and it brings out a lot of the facts, the straight up facts about how Microsoft is absolutely punishing, crushing Sony and Nintendo when it comes to backward compatibility, which for somebody like me that is a retro gamer as well as a modern AAA title player, a lot of these titles are still good. They're still great. They might not look the prettiest anymore. We'll talk about how Microsoft's making that not the case anymore, but they might not be the prettiest, but the core gameplay is still phenomenal. The stories are still great, and they're still worth a replay. Yesterday, Microsoft made it possible to instantly stream a bunch of older Xbox 360 and original Xbox games to devices compatible with Game Pass. It's another piece of evidence that Microsoft is taking backward compatibility very seriously this time around, and that Sony and Nintendo have fallen behind in a big way. Sony in particular used to be the leader in this space. Right out of the box, you could play almost every original PlayStation 1 game on a PS2. I remember that. You literally could pop the discs in there. In fact, you could even use the same memory cards, letting you share... What the... Oh god, I hate ad pop-ups on these news platforms. You could even use your old memory cards, letting you carry old save files forward to the new generation. PlayStation 3 started off well enough in 06. The earliest PS3 models could run both PS1 and PS2 models. Later models sadly ditched the hardware in favor of a less accurate software-based PS2 emulation. I still remember that. The PS3, the big bulky original, could play PS1 and PS2, but then the future slimmed down versions did not have backward compatibility support. They used an emulation system, but it was pretty whack. Later PS3 models removed even that, completely eliminating PS2 backward compatibility. You cannot play your PS1 through 3 games on your PS5. The closest thing Sony has to emulation on modern consoles are PS2 Classics, which are digital versions of older games with trophy support, and PS Now, which is basically their version of Game Pass, but it's not as good, which lets you stream a small collection of PS3 games on your new hardware. Sony seems to be moving in the wrong direction, having just announced the imminent closing of PS3, PS Vita, and PSP digital stores, making it harder to play old games even on their original hardware, let alone the newest consoles. For a while, Nintendo, like Sony, was pretty good at making it possible to play older games. You might have played GameCube games on a Wii. There's even controller ports. I have a jailbroken Wii in the living room there next to the PS5 and the series, and it's pretty cool. You can plug in GameCube controllers and even play native GameCube games on there. Or might have played Game Boy Advance. I think this is supposed to be cards, but yeah, Game Boy Advance games on your DS. When the 3DS and Wii U, this was a rough time. They had dominated the 7th generation of consoles, basically beating the sales of the 360 and the PS3. Even though they had a substantially less powerful console, it sold phenomenally. The Wii U was a complete flop. The 3DS did really well, though. Nintendo restarted the entire process, releasing only a subset of classic games and forcing players to buy them new on each successive platform. I hate that. PlayStation does that too, where you can't just play the game that you've owned in the past. You have to rebuy it, which is kind of dumb. The situation on Nintendo Switch is strange too. Instead of offering the usual a la carte or individual virtual console purchases, Nintendo locked an even more limited selection of classic games behind its premium Nintendo Switch Online subscription service. So for me, being a retro gamer, I'm all about emulation. I have a little RetroPie single board computer over here. This bad boy has the entire, basically, library of classic Nintendo games, all backups of games that I did own the native hardware of back in the day. We're talking NES, SNES, etc. And if you have, you can't run it on here because it's not powerful enough, but on your just regular gaming PC, you can install something like RetroArch or Emulation Station, and you can pretty much emulate Wii, GameCube through something like the Dolphin emulator, which is a plugin for those programs. So it's kind of hard for me to validate, you know, purchasing stuff from Nintendo when you have owned these in the past and they want you to pay for them again. These are games that you have legally owned in the past. Why not just obtain them again for yourself? You know what I mean? Anyway, with Xbox Series, Microsoft continued its vigorous support of backward compatibility. The new Xbox can play almost every Xbox One game, just like the PS5 can play almost any PS4 game. But all the 360 and original Xbox games previously supported on Xbox One, which are like a huge chunk of the library, are playable too. All this works seamlessly and with little issue. It's literally so simple. You just launch them and they just work. As we're on my PS5, I've been trying to play a lot of PS4 games, and there's some compatibility issues there. And that's frustrating. I'm going to make a separate video showcasing some examples of this.
Now that ripped your face right off. Right off. There's nothing you can do with that.
This cross-generational support lets players boot up 4 different generations of Xbox consoles and play the same game via Steam Link with no need for trickery or extra hardware. So you can play the same game on like 4 different consoles, plus 5 if you include the phone. Actually, make it 6 if you include the Windows 10 PCs, which are also integrated with the ecosystem of Xbox. They're doing some things right over there at Microsoft. Besides all this stuff we're talking about here, I mean, they bought Bethesda, dropped a pretty good headset. Microsoft continues to let me buy Xbox 360 games and DLC on new machines from the same store it launched with the 360 in 2005. Yep, they're still live. This is a big one, ladies. Take a good grip on this thick one. Microsoft doesn't just support older games and consoles better than Sony, but it improves them with features like auto, high dynamic range, and frames per second boost, giving older games a fresh feel on new machines. When you play some of these nostalgic classics from your childhood at a higher frame rate and HDR, it's freaking awesome because it looks like a more modern title. It doesn't look like a brand new AAA, obviously, but it looks prettier than it did originally, and you still get that core gameplay from your childhood. It's a win-win. Last night, I played Oblivion on my phone. I didn't have to buy or download it. I just hit play, and it streamed to my mobile device in seconds. That's a quarter chub right there. Microsoft's retro game support is so good it makes Nintendo and Sony's offerings look terrible in comparison. Damn, Kotaku, damn. Nintendo doesn't support old Wii or Wii U games on the Switch, locks its meager classics behind a paywall, and even removes new games from sale after a limited time. Sony is shutting down older digital stores and doesn't seem to care about any games released before the PS4. Both companies continue to do little and do it poorly, which is frustrating. They each have vast libraries of content, and neither seems interested or willing to support that old content half as well as Microsoft. Dang. Kotaku's right on the money here. I'm going to say this right up front. You know, obviously not a fanboy. I'm a huge fan of PlayStation, Sony, and Nintendo, and PC. I just like gaming in general. That's why it's the gamer heaven, not the Xbox heaven or the PlayStation heaven. As somebody that does own the Series and the PlayStation 5, I have firsthand experience dicking around with backward compatibility, and the dickings are better. There's a better dicking to be had over there on the Xbox, for sure. The library's bigger. A lot of the titles are FPS boosted, and they are adding HDR support to a lot of these games. I don't foresee them adding like ray tracing or anything, because that's more something that has to be baked into the native, the development process of the game, like actually programmed into it. And these aren't reprogramming them, they're writing the script or anything like that. All it's doing is taking these old games and then applying like an HDR filter on them and increasing the frame rate, which is enough to make them look pretty damned good.
Taste, it shall be.
And I just wanted to share this with you guys because if you are in the market for a new console, as I'm sure a lot of you guys are, and backward compatibility is a factor for you. Some people don't give a shit, period, and that's fine. If you just want to get a new console and play new games, hey, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But if you're somebody like me that likes to play the new, the old, and the present, then backward compatibility is kind of a big deal. Now, granted, like I said, I do a lot of emulation on my PC and whatnot, but The fact that it is so easily baked into the Xbox is a huge selling factor. What is your guys' opinion of backward compatibility? Drop it in the comment section below. Do you give a damn? Is it something you care about? Are you an old timer like me with some gray hairs down below in the nether regions, and it gives you a tickle in the old gamer satchel whenever you launch one of these childhood classics? That's how it is for me. I get a little butterfly nuzzle down there, and it makes me happy. It makes me smile. If you enjoyed the video, it was entertaining and or informative, smashing the like button, as the YouTubers like to say, does help the video to get seen by more people, kind of tickles the YouTube algorithm, which in turn helps to grow my channel, which I do solidly appreciate. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover a lot of news in the gaming community and industry, and tutorials helping you get set up streaming and YouTubing. Peace.